Hey y'all, welcome to the Liberation is Lit podcast, where the power of storytelling meets the force of social change. I'm your host, Tayler Simon, and in this podcast, we believe in the profound impact of stories. And I am so glad to be joined today with AJ Johnson, aka Moses Oaktree. And we're going to get into it about everything: poetry, spoken word, writing, all of the good things. So, what's up, AJ?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm chilling. I'm chilling. Just trying to stay cool in this heat.
Yeah, good luck.
Right. So, AJ, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as a writer, as storyteller, and what inspires you to write poetry?
Awesome. So, for those who don't know me, my name is AJ. I go by Moses Oaktree as my pen name. I've been kind of into poetry for a nice little time now. I think going through school, I think one of the things that I noticed pretty early on was we're reading all this literature. It's super interesting. They go a lot of different directions, but there's not a whole lot of like Black authors. There's not a lot of authors that look like me, talk like me, represent my history, or even my struggle in a lot of way. Literature, I guess, learning it disconnected from your history feels very abstract in a lot of ways. I'm learning so much, about all these values and all these morals and all these ideas from all these other people that don't look like me. I think because of that, it kind of created this push for me to learn more, and I ended up finding, I guess, some authors that really connected to me. Early on, those included everybody goes. It says Langston Hughes was their poet muse in a lot of ways. For me, it was probably Amiri Baraka, Leroy Jones. He was one of the first Black poets I found in my school library, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is kind of cool. I kind of like this guy. It just going off of that, just off of the history of the all the stories that you kind of are forced to read in literature, I was able to kind of supplement for myself, and ultimately it became a goal of, well, there aren't a lot of Black writers, there aren't a lot of Black male writers. I think I would like to be one. Additionally, there is a lot of culture not being written about, and a lot of our stories that aren't being touched on. There's not a lot of Black fiction that I can find. There's not a lot of Black horror that I can find. There's not a lot of Black sci-fi that I can find. And even with the Black poetry, all anybody knows is Langston. So let me see what I can do.
Yes, definitely representation is an issue. I think the only books by Black authors I read in grade school was probably Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry,
Mm.
and Their Eyes Were Watching God. And one was in fourth grade and one was in 12th grade. So
Yeah.
hardly anything in between.
No, it's super bad, especially in the South. I don't know if it's very different in the North. Most of my education, my time has been in the South, but I can say just finding some kind of representation, and especially in literature, and in literature as a Black male, especially. I love my Black women. I really do. You got Toni Morrison out there who's just incredible. More contemporary, you have like your Jessamine Wards, you have your Alice Walkers, you have, a ton of Black women who are really pushing the envelope of what literature can be. Octavia Butler. But as far as Black men go and Black men in literature, it is a dearth. It is really tough to find someone. I was, I've been very inspired by the work of Ralph Ellison, but in a fictional realm, it's just been tough. I've tried to get into authors like Marlon James. I've tried to get into, a lot of different Black male literature just so I could have better ways to be able to speak, from myself and from my own experience. You can, check out your Baldwins. It's just, it's a very limited, like, sample size. Um, and I guess that's one of the things that frustrates me, but it frustrates me into my creativity.
And something I didn't really notice because I'm a Black woman is that even the Black male authors that I know, they wrote for Black women, like the
Right.
Omar Tyrees and
Yeah.
like the Eric Jerome Dickeys. They're
Yeah.
writing for
Exactly.
Black women.
Mm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So,
But
like, there isn't a lot.
well, I will say this. So I used to work at a bookstore. Shout out to the Book Tavern in Augusta, Georgia. Black men in general in literature. It's that there's definitely a dissonance, and it's really because all day. I mean, you can be like, man, I got the hardest bars. I'm out here, I can spit better than anybody else. There's this whole idea. Ta-Nehisi Coates talks about it. He said it's the idea is Tolstoy of the Zulus, right? It's like, hey, I want to be the best black writer of all time, and this was a thing that a lot of black literati had to deal with. We're talking 40s, 50s, 60s. Boom, boom. Like I'm that dude, and it's kind of shifted into like best rapper alive, best rapper alive. It's like, okay, is this the only platform that we have to be able to like, work with our ideas and kind of like, try to, share and create and be? Does it have to be rap? Does it have to be hip hop? Does it have to be R&B? Does it have to have a soundtrack to my soul?
Do you think the lack of representation, specifically for Black male writers, contributes to Black men not being as interested in reading in books?
I think it's two parts. I think it's just how we've been encultured in general. So if you've struggled with literature all your life and you don't have any representation around you of like, black men in literature, black men writers, if you don't know any black men writers or have seen any black men writing, you're not going to be interested in writing. Oh, I've only seen, black rappers, et cetera, et cetera. And especially if you've been frustrated in your English class, if you're that guy who's like, oh, if the teacher calls on you, like, it's gonna sound crazy. You're like, yeah, it's probably not the direction that you wanna be affiliated with. You're probably gonna wanna be doing something else. So it's not only a lack of literary education in the culture, because that would have to be very specified, very concentrated because there is so little representation in it. But it's also that, it's just not pushed upon. It's not, hey, this is a thing that we do. This is a thing that we're about. Here's a couple of examples for it. This is who we are as Black people. We are readers.
And so you becoming a writer to be kind of like the representation that you sought, you are also working to help other Black writers. So you facilitate a really cool writing and performance practice group in the community called the Tree House or Tree
Right.
X. How do you say the X house?
It's like the manga Hunter x Hunter. It's just
Yes.
Treehouse. Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
It's
Okay. Which I do need to go back to. My Wednesdays just have been booked the last few months, but I'm gonna get back to them. But
good,
what led you to start these workshops, and how can people, I know you do these workshops for free,
right?
and how can people support you in doing this work?
Yeah, so I got into it because I'm actually selfish, like selfish as hell. And the thing is, I wanna be Tolstoy of the Zulus. Like, I wanna be that dude like, "Hey, man, his pen is crazy. Yo, every time he writes something, every time I see him, it's just, dang, that dude deep." I want that for me. But I also recognize that, like, I can only go so far by myself, that, like, no matter what your concept of genius is, it's because of what you've been, what you've been shown, what you come in contact with. It's about the outside influences that you've had. It's about your horizons. It requires other people. It requires other things, even if it's just reading other people's writing to get better. But what we do as a group, I really picked up from a book I read recently. I'm not entirely sure which one it was, but it was talking about the Inklings. Do you know who the Inklings are? Cool. But you do, because the Inklings are J.R.R. Tolkien, they are C.S. Lewis, and they're a group of other guys who got together every Wednesday for years and years and years and just tore each other apart. They would sit down and, "Hey, this is what I wrote this week. How y'all feel about it?" And they would go over it and they would talk about it and boom, 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 boom. And if it was JRR, apparently he was super righteous about it, and he would just be like, "Yeah, C.S. Lewis, that was trash. You should go back. You should check that out. I would not put that out anywhere." And that was J.R.R. Tolkien. And then you'd have C.S. Lewis and all these other guys, and all these other guys are also published for their work. and it was about being accountable to each other. It was like, hey, yo, I'm J.R.R. Tolkien. C.S. Lewis, I expect you to bring some new stuff this coming Wednesday. And C.S. Lewis expected somebody else to come with some new stuff, and they could talk about it and they could build about it and they could say, hey, this is where we need to be in order for this stuff to come through. And there's a reason why we know their names. So for me, it's like if I want to be Tolstoy of the Zulus, if I want to be the best author, performing poet, speaker that I can be, if that's part of my dream, I need other people who are also going to be able to influence my work to be at their best. I need them to be shooting at being, oh, I'm the best writer alive. I'm the best rapper alive. I'm the best poet alive. Da, da, da. I need them shooting to be at their pinnacle so that they can push my pinnacle so that I can be somebody who's just like, bro, we don't understand how all these guys are so good, but like all these guys are so good. And for me to get there, it's not about me. It's about me, but it's not about me. Because it's a group effort. It's a individual effort within a group. So if I charge, it becomes about me. It becomes, hey, yo, Moses is out here charging because it's his show. He's the teacher, blah, 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 blah. Nah, for me, it's about it being a forum. I want everybody to come together and recognize that nobody's better, nobody's worse, but we're all going to push each other to be the best that that person can be so that they can push us to be the best person that we can be. And it becomes this ongoing cycle of because I'm better, you're better, and because you're better, I'm better. And that's all I've ever wanted from it.
I love that. Just this a community collaborative space, and you do a great job of facilitating. That's why I use the word facilitation and not teaching. And you
Appreciate
do
that.
a great job facilitating, especially with your compliment sandwiches. So I've gotten to see you perform quite a few times. What do you think sets you apart as a spoken word performer? What is pushing you? What is that secret sauce that is driving you to becoming the Tolstoy of the Zulus? And how do you incorporate elements of storytelling?
Yeah. So for me, my storytelling goes back to yeah, I try to dig deep into the oral tradition, right? It's old as people. So it's that is something that I want to be able to hold and maintain in this new day. And I recognize that, it might not be as popular, as obvious as like hip hop is. But at the same time, it's for me, our cultural history is maintained through oral tradition as much as it is through the written word, especially if people aren't reading. So, what I do is I go back and I collect our stories. I collect folk tales, East African folk tales, West African folk tales, especially African American folk tales, whether they're Joel Chandler Harris, we're talking like Brer Rabbit, John the Conqueror, all these African American folk tales that disappear because there's nobody to continue to share them. So when I write, I not only try to keep the history of our oral tradition, not only do I try to code my language in a way of like, these are our stories. This is how we free ourselves from the plantation that we see and don't see. It is especially important for me to be able to say, hey, if you hear this, this is going to make you think something, make you feel something, make you more, whether that is to start the process of dissolving the ego or even super inflating your ego with that which makes you feel like more of you. I want to be able to give you those seeds or at least the words that can act as the seeds for you to become outside of that just being my philosophy that it has to tie back to our folklore as African Americans, which is like so easily lost because no one's sharing. Um, I try to bring a level of philosophy and spirituality to my work as well. I like talking spiritual in my stuff because that is who I am, and I want to be able to have those conversations with people. I'm really big into Khalil Gibran and Rumi and Eastern poetry in general. I like to look into lately. I've been getting into other languages and poetry, so I'll check out some Pablo Neruda. I've been checking out a lot of Spanish and French lately. and Spanish, French, and some Japanese as well. There's some like Ocean Vuong. There's a lot of really interesting poets and writers out there. Shoot, I'm a fan of Salman Rushdie. Uh, One of the things that really I feel like kind of set me apart from a lot of poets, whatever, is I still read. And the thing is, a lot of people don't seem to, and they wonder why it feels like the level of their pen is capped. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Have you read any Ellison or Baldwin? Who do you still read? Who do you still look at? If you want to be Tolstoy, the Zulus, have you read Tolstoy? What about Shakespeare? Have you just read the couple that they made you read in school? What about everybody else? I want to be able to write horror. So who do I read? King. Who else do I read? Lovecraft, even though he has a weird history. I think it's being open to all these outside influences, but recognizing that like you're gonna have to go get it. And it's not gonna be easy all the time, but your pen deserves it. And the day that you decide that like, dang, I want to be a better writer, it's gonna require you to be a better reader.
I definitely agree with that because I'm reading all the time and I'm also interested in writing horror. So I've been reading a lot of horror. I actually am in the middle of a young adult horror anthology called The Black Girl Doesn't Die in this one. So I've been reading a lot of horror lately. But you talked a little bit about using your poetry and your spoken word to plant seeds to
Mhm.
liberate mind. So are there other ways that you think spoken word and poetry can be a tool for liberation?
Absolutely. There are a couple of ways that I think that it happens, right? Number one, I think words are powerful. I think words allow you an opportunity to express yourself and express your meanings in ways that you might not always, be able to articulate. So, for instance, I told you that I was getting into Spanish, right? I'm getting into other languages and their poetry, and I'm actively learning Spanish. I didn't learn it in school, so I'm just like, all right, well, I'm gonna teach myself Spanish, right? So I'm teaching myself Spanish right now, and one of the things that I picked up, not only am I actively practicing Spanish, I'm learning how to learn Spanish. And one of the things that I learned was that when you learn a second language, it provides you a vocabulary that is separate from your own, that your brain processes in a different way. Because of that, if you were to learn a second language, you would have a whole nother means to process not just your ideas, but your feelings as well. And that one of the best ways in order to deal with trauma or issues that are just really hard to talk about is to be able to talk about them in your other language because your first language is so tied to your emotion that the second language can allow you to kind of separate just enough that it doesn't have the same emotional effect on you that it would if you talked about this in the first language. Learning this, I can kind of recognize that every word is holds levels of meaning and context that have the capacity to affect us on a day to day. And if we come to learn and understand more words that are more representative of different concepts and different feelings, we have a better emotional vocabulary in general. So learning words that coincide with feelings like Schadenfreude, right? That's German. You know what Schadenfreude is? Okay. Schadenfreude is the feeling that you get when somebody else fucks up and you want to like, you're just like that, like, I'm glad you fucked up. Like that's Schadenfreude, that feeling of like, yeah, it feels good to see you fuck up. Like that's Schadenfreude, and that's German. And now that you have the word, you have a better understanding of that feeling, and you can put your feeling into that word. And that's just a word. What about all the other feelings that have words that you're struggling to conceptualize? They talk about how Eskimos have many definitions of many different words for love, as if because love itself as one word can't hold all the ways that we love. So they have all these numbers of different words, and we're just talking about love. What if we talked about revolutionary concepts? What if we had a concept of libertarianism versus Marxism? The Black Panthers had terms they used often, like counter-revolutionary. And that would be of interest to you if you checked out Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, which was a really cool one. So the idea of counter-revolutionary, that thing that you did, counter-revolutionary, that ain't what we do because we trying to get things done. So there's words, and they may come in and out of popularity. They may represent jargon, but at the end of the day, the goal is, hey, I have a word that I can use to conceptualize this idea, and because I can conceptualize this idea, I can act on it. And to me, that's the power of words. If I can introduce you to a word, I can introduce you to a concept. And if I can introduce you to a concept, I can introduce you to an action. And if I can introduce you to an action, we can take action on that in order to execute whatever goal it is we're trying to meet. And to me, I mentioned that spirituality is really important to me. I mentioned that folk history is really important to me. But Amiri Baraka is the guy who introduced me to like poetry and what poetry could be. And if we're talking about coming up in the 50s, 60s, we're talking about being a black man in the 50s, 60s, and we're talking about that revolutionary poetry that like what people lean on Gil Scott Heron about. If we're talking about like, hey, let's talk about how fucked up this world is and what we can do about it. We're talking about beat poets. If we're talking about the beatniks, if we're talking about Def Jam poetry, in the 90s when it was just like, yeah, nigga, like this shit crazy. Like, like what we gonna do about it? And even today, when performance poetry is at its height, like when it's popular, it's often in a time of war. It's somebody has been laid low, something has been put in place to hold us back, somebody's been shot, somebody can't breathe. It is a whole world of like, hey, we got to talk about this. And not only do we need to talk about this, we need to talk about it in a way that is entertaining and educating so that ultimately we can take action on it because some people aren't going to sit for a speech by Cornel West, but they will listen to a poet talk about how fucked up shit is in rhythm.
Yes, I definitely agree with all of that. And like it's a huge reason why I started Liberation is Lit in the first place. So I definitely agree. So, lastly, what advice would you offer listeners who want to make a positive impact in their communities?
So the new thing that I've been on lately is organize. My heroes growing up were people who were really, really good at organizing. As a black man, that might sound a little weird because my hero wasn't like Michael Jordan. It wasn't like like King Griffey Jr. It wasn't a sports star because it just I'm like 5'5". Like it's like it is what it is. But like who I was into Martin Luther King. I wanted to be Martin Luther King. I want to be Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Huey P. Newton or Bobby Seale or Elijah Muhammad, Gandhi, any guy who was able to use their mind, use their spirit, use their voice in order to compel people. Not only were they incredibly driven and intelligent and charismatic, which are things that I try to bring into my life, they were able to organize and execute. And my big thing growing up was always, where are the black leaders? Where are the black leaders? Where are the black leaders? Who should I follow? Who would I want to follow? Who do I like? Where is the king? And I realized that it took me forever. And I realized that it's just a matter of who is organizing under the flag of like, let's get stuff done. Let's come together and get stuff done as a group. What did MLK do? He had the Southern Christian Conference. He organized or helped organize. He had a group that helped him organize the Million Man March. He was able to bring all these people together. We can talk about Malcolm X and the Nation of Islam. I love Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale and the Black Panthers. It was an organization. we as people who are able to speak, able to write, able to really be in our minds having a vision, about having a vision and about bringing that vision to life and it being specifically a vision that's going to be better for all of us. The key to execution is organization. And whatever it is that you want, it requires other people and it requires other people to be on board. So bring other people together. If you want to be the best writer you can be, bring them together. Bring together the best writers that you can bring together so that all of you can be the best writers. So that if you want to be the best writer, you got a group of best writers to sharpen your sword. If you want to make change in your community, organize in your community. However you choose to go about that, if it's through poetry, if it's through writing, you can. It's about organizing a forum and organizing the community around that forum and around that group. If you want something, shoot, you want money, you organize people. Like all of us, let's go get this money. Every rapper got a crew. Hey, it's an organized group towards a singular goal. And that's what gets us to where we're trying to get to. If you want to talk about people of color, if you want to talk about black folk and about why we are struggling the way that we are, it's because, outside of the church, like, where are we organized? Sports? I mean, the guys at the top of sports are making plenty of money. Is that all? Is that all? Like, is that what's left? What about our, what about politically? What about internationally? What about manufacturing and business? How many black banks are there? And it's just a matter of like how we have organized ourselves as a culture and how we choose to do so. It's organization. It's organization. And at least for me, that's where it's gotta start. If you wanna make change in your community, whatever your skill is, whether it's writing, whether it's speaking, whether it's bringing people together, just being a great gifted person, being nice, being kind, people love you. Everybody has something that they can give into a greater community. So organize, build that community, and with that community that you build, shoot for a collective goal.
Yes, I definitely agree. Organizing, build community, because like you said earlier, like, you can't do this by yourself.
No,
So, yeah.
I'm tired now. It's
Right. I quote this all the time. I quote this book all the time, The Black Joy
it's
Project, if you can
cool.
see it. There's a quote in here that talks about when you are listening to a choir, the members of the choir trust each other, so when somebody needs to take a breath, everybody else can keep going, and we trust each other, so when we need to rest, like, the choir still goes.
Right.
So, where can people find you and your work and keep up with you, and do you have anything that you want to, update us on that you're doing?
Okay. My big thing is I'm on Instagram right now. You can find me on Instagram at MOSES_OAKTREE. That's MOSES_OAKTREE. Moses Oaktree. That's generally like where I live. As far as upcoming events, this Friday, there's a Baldwin event here in Columbia that I would recommend everyone check out. That would be super cool. I'm a big fan of Baldwin. I think I love Black intellectualism. I want more of it. Baldwin is that guy, super cool. That's this Friday and that's this Saturday. So I'll be out there this weekend. And the next week, I'm doing like an erotic poetry slam. So that will be fun. So if y'all are into like, sexy poetry, Eric Jerome Dickey, like Zane, that's going to be a really fun space. And, all that's going to be posted up on my social medias and everything as well. And just throughout this year, I'm looking to put a website together. Probably like I'm set the goal to release my poetry book this year. And I'm already talking with a couple of friends about starting some recording as far as actually like recording some stuff because it would suck if I've lived my whole life writing and speaking and I passed and no one could go back and hear me. And a lot of what I realized as far as poetry goes, poets aren't here forever. And they really do put their time and their energy to be the best writers they can be in a lot of cases. And at the very least, they have a message. But when they don't do the work of recording their message, it gets lost. And not everybody can respect how short life is and how important those voices are in the moment. So for those who are looking to grow in the field or have any concept of it, they need a guide. And you recording your work gives them at least the breadcrumbs, especially if you're good. Everyone deserves that. And so that's definitely something that I've set myself out to do this year is like, man, I should, as much as I'm big on the oral tradition of things, maybe it's worth recording from time to time.
Still building that archive, which I've been learning a lot about archival work lately. So, yes. And I will be at the Baldwin event too. I'm not reading anything original. I'm just reading an essay by Baldwin, but I'll be there selling books too.
Cool. I'm excited.
Yes. So, thank y'all so much for being a part of the Liberation is Lit podcast. If you have stories to share, want to suggest any topics, or just want to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Liberation is Lit, or visit our website at liberationislit.com. If you enjoyed the episode, please consider leaving a review and remember your voice matters. And together, through the lens of stories, we're going to make a difference in the world. Until next time.